And I'd like to welcome everyone to the May WASDE report, and thank you for your time in joining us. This will be our first look at the new crop. Usually, this report doesn't have a lot of big surprises from the prospective planning report and the acreage report, but given the changes we saw in the acreage report, today could be a little bit different. Also, there's plenty of ideas about old crop stocks being a little bit smaller, particularly for corn, and we'll see how those actually materialize. Brooks, what do you have for
Well,
us?
I think you touched on it, maybe a tick lower on overall old crop supply. I think anything with a 2.0 in front of that's kind of what the market expects. If we got a big surprise, it would be a 1.9 number. And of course, I'm referring to carry out in billions of bushels. I guess one of the things that we'll start to focus on, Sterling, as we switch over to new crop is, trying to look at what's going on in the crop insurance world and guess those acres out there. And one surprise that I saw yesterday was out of our claims department, and our claims number about 30% of what it was a year ago. Kind of interesting. We looked at, of course, at prevent, plant, and replant being a big portion of that, and both those are considerably lower, which typically would mean that the crop is getting put in the ground, and it's getting put in the ground pretty good the first time with lack of replant. So we'll see how that calculates in.
Yeah, well, we haven't seen a lot of really adverse weather. The rain that we've picked up here, other than the tornadic activity, has been, in 1 inch increments. We haven't had too many of those big 3 and 4 inch washout sort of things. So that bodes well. The question is really, where are we going to land with that final acre number with corn?
I think if I'm not mistaken, the outlook number, which came out earlier or late winter, I guess you would say, somewhere around 91 million. Of course, a little bit of a shocker there at the end of March. I think it was March 27th on the prospective planning's got us down to 90. It's going to be a number that I think that the market is going to really be doing some soul searching and head scratching on. Are we really going to be that low? And that's going to be a big determinant of what the 2023, 24, 24, 25 carry out ends up at. And that story will unfold for us week by week here over the next couple of months.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone will be searching for an edge. Anybody who's got real-time satellite data is going to be pouring over that left and right. So that's something, watching how the funds behave, because those guys do have serious technology. It'll be interesting to see. And here of late, they've been willing to cover up the positions a little bit and take some of that short off the table, which is seasonally normal, by the way. But we'll just see how things progress over the month of May here.
A decent start to the day. Corn traded both sides last night. I think it's primarily up half a cent to a penny most of the way through the overnight, and some strength here in the last hour. What do you give that to, Sterling?
Well, this is a little bit, frankly, unusual. We've got corn up 6.5 cents here right now, as you can see. New crop up 5.5. Normally, we would see things and expect things like we would be seeing with the beans, where we're like down 1/4 cent. That's normal for being in front of the report. As you move down the quote page here, you can see, let me make sure everyone can see this clearly and correctly. You see the wheat market doesn't seem to realize that there's a report today. They're back in here buying it, and there is on the edges, on the fringes, there is some wheat story developing, a little smaller Russian crop. Ukrainian numbers are expected to drop more meaningfully for this next crop year. And you mix that with the big short position, especially still in Kansas City and Minneapolis, that will start to propel the market higher. Now, those shorts are getting underwater here, and that can turn into a bit of a feeding frenzy, as we saw in the cotton market going up and going down. So we do have a little bit of external bullish pressure here helping the wheat market out, and that in turn, for some reason, seems to help out the corn market, which doesn't seem terribly intuitive, but that is kind of how that works.
Sterling, from a soft red wheat perspective, we're going to be probably in harvest, really, up through the Delta into Illinois and Ohio. Let's say June 10th through June 20th, maybe a smidgen earlier than that this year. And that wheat looks pretty good. These are some pretty decent opportunities, the best ones we've seen for months. What do you do here as a producer? The crop looks good in the field. You've seen almost $1 rally in Chicago wheat. You're in soft red territory. The weather looks pretty good. You take some bites of this right here.
Absolutely. You absolutely need to. The real question here for the winter wheat is going to be how Kansas performs. And there's areas, you can draw Kansas right in half, or if you look west of Interstate 35, there's plenty of issues. And right now, that's helping propel this market higher. Here's what we know about wheat. There can be issues on Monday. A week and a half later, those issues manage to go away, and suddenly we're looking at a bigger crop. And how aggressively they could take away a sharp rally will get your undivided attention. So, yes, I would definitely start nibbling some off here. And if your worst basis July futures is 651, and that's your first increment, you're not going to hate that if your next one's at 675.
Kind of give you a breakdown. Sterling took that conversation very quickly away from soft red over to hard red, just to kind of give you an idea of the production numbers out there and the different types of wheat in the U.S. and why hard red carries such a kind of a big hammer here. Hard red wheat production, 750 ish million. Soft red, 343 million. And then you go to your spring, your hard red spring around 492, white 264 million, and then Durham kind of rounds things out at 70. So of the 1.9 billion, that kind of gives you a good idea of how things are weighted. So that Kansas wheat crop that's been under the spotlight so much over the last couple of weeks, you can see why it's so important.
Absolutely. That can be a game changer. And then, we look at the spring wheat, which we're seeing pretty good planting progress on. We'll see how the weather just exactly fares out with that. Because there are some ideas out there that, yes, May is going to be nice for precipitation out here in the states that end in A. But after that, there's more questions than good answers. So let's move on to today's report here. Talk about that a little bit.
Sterling, in looking at today's report, it's always the unknowns. It's all the things we don't talk about before the report that can surprise us. But you mentioned that there's a consensus out there that maybe old crop stocks on corn or carry out on corn might be a little lower.
There's
Attribute those
there's a
to two things.
that that's
What
a
couple of
that,
things do we attribute that to?
well, there's that consensus, and I'm an outlier from that consensus. I don't see any reason for them to cut those stocks. Exports are running below the 5-year average. There's not a lot of reason to think that they're magically going to improve in the next 2 months. That would be your biggest thing that can move it. Ethanol use has been fairly steady. Feed numbers have been steady. The production numbers won't change. So that may be people trying to generate some enthusiasm. Maybe they're seeing something in the export corridor that I'm not seeing. Maybe it's ideas that there won't be as much corn coming out of Brazil. That comes out awfully late, though, so we'll just see exactly how much that really drives it. And the other question is, will the USDA acknowledge it on this report? Because the other thing that, when we look at this report, there's going to be down here stuff for Brazil and Argentina. Where are we going to be with this corn production number? The idea is that number is going to be lower. That's one issue. Where are they going to come in with the soybeans? They've been, fairly. The USDA has not been as aggressive as CONAB has been on this. Now, CONAB is going to be having a report that's going to come out on the 14th next week. So I will have coverage in for that as well, because that will actually matter to where our old crop stocks end, which of course drives where our new stocks are going to be.
All good points. The market's kind of giving clues into the corn and wheat numbers on this report and nothing on beans. So you know how this works, Sterling. Since we've got no bean news, that will be the dramatic supplier of information in
That
this
that
report.
that will be the sudden shock.
Yeah, that's right. That's
That
right.
that will be the shock. Now, what we're looking at here for corn, we've got two sets of corn numbers. Old crop ending stocks right now is being guessed at 2094, which is a little bit different from the 2122 number there. That's only taken about 30 off.
Yeah.
That's not that big of a deal. What they're looking for new crop for ending stocks here is 2.282, which is almost 2.3 billion. That's kind of a heavy number. When we come down here to soybeans, last year's ending stocks are 340. We'll see what they do with those. But this year you're basically at 440. So you're adding 100. Now, that's all been baked and cooked into the market for months.
Yeah.
We'll see, we've seen some better performance. We saw a really nice terse rally in the soybeans. Some of that was dollar driven. Some of that is Brazil flood driven, which is a real thing. And some of it is I've been short and I've been making money. Just get me out.
Yeah. And sometimes that's all it takes. And you mentioned that being that this time of the year, not unexpected. If you look at the histories of this, and we're going to see volatility one way or the other today in more cases than not.
Yeah, and I have my charts loaded up for corn. So that guarantees the volatility will be somewhere
Soybeans, yeah,
else.
yeah,
But upward volatility in the soybeans, if for some reason, if they can take this 340 number down, that will help this number. That's probably the only thing that will help it, because most likely they aren't going to mess with the yields. They're going to take what they took from the Outlook conference. Doesn't mean they can't, particularly with corn, because corn, we cut the acres back a little bit. Does that mean maybe we're going to push that yield number up to an even higher imagined number than what we've seen before?
I think that's a real possibility. I think we're sitting around 181, 180.72. It looks like is the survey guess. And when you think
Yeah.
about lack of replant claims so far. And granted, we're a little bit behind pace, but we're going to catch up pretty quick. I'm not worried about the corn planting pace at all. I think a lot of corn gets planted in the next 10 days across the U.S. And it looks like it's going in some pretty good conditions.
Yeah.
And with lack of replant, with the I states being, maintaining their corn acreage, I got a feeling that 181 is something we could attain, and I think that would be a record for the U.S.
Oh, that would be a record by, if we can hit 181 in January, that's a record by, I don't know, just offhand, about 3 bushels an acre. We have
One thing
never cleared 180 on a January number. So that would be a record. And right now it looks good. But again, this is where, when we hear what Jeff thinks about the weather on our third Thursday meeting, that story can change, because again, to get that 181, what kind of yield you're going to need? You're going to need the Koufax yield.
got to be perfect.
You're going to have to be perfect. And not only that, you're going to kind of have to be perfect everywhere. And that's a pretty good trick.
One thing I've noticed, at least in the fringe areas, you still don't see a lot of cover crop in the really, really prime areas. I see a lot of that ground continuing to be worked in the fall, but I see farmers getting better and better in cover crop, Sterling, and we're seeing more cover crop acres. And that's something that studies at universities showed that we were having lags in yield in cover crop acres, but the planting technology is better and better and better. And sometimes I think the old timers, if they saw you dragging these planters through some of these heavy cover crops, they would think, what in the world are you doing? But we're getting better and better adapted to that.
Yeah. So again, better technology. Are we going to see enough of a bump in the technology combined with most excellent weather to get to that number that the USDA has been putting out for corn for a while now? And we're talking years, and we've yet to attain it. Is this the magic year? Well, we'll see how many rounds of golf I get in June. If I'm interfered with, then we'll know. If tea time every day and it doesn't rain
Yeah.
right here in Points East, well, we may have a problem.
In other words, we want sterling to be on the greens as little as possible in the month.
Yeah, yeah, we're going for sterling with really low water bills because the dryness has been quite something. And here we are. We are at report time here. It's 11 o'clock. And the number comes out at 2102 for the corn ending stocks, smaller than expected. Old crop ending stocks at 2022, again, a little smaller than expected. Soybean yields at 52 and corn at 181, right in line with expectations. Soybean ending stocks 445, a little bigger than expectations. So let's move over here and take a look at the market. Corn is now up about 8.5 cents to 9 cents, which is a couple of cents better than where we were trading. Soybeans are actually up 3.5. Wheat is up, we're up 20 cents in Chicago and Minneapolis, 17 to 20 in Kansas City. So let's see what we have here for the wheat numbers. Wheat production at 1858, a smidge smaller than expected. Let's see where we have total wheat ending stocks, 766. Again, a little smaller than expected, bigger than last year, but again, smaller than expected. And this new crop ending stocks number for corn actually a little bit smaller than what we had last year. So we do have a little bit of bullish nervousness here going on. Let's take a look here for cotton. Cotton ending stocks at 370, noticeably bigger than last year and bigger than expectations at 3.49. And for South America, let's see what we have here for Argentina. Soybean production at 51, a little better. Soybean production old crop at 50. Corn production new crop at 53. This was expected to be 52. That's a touch bearish. Soybean production for new crop. This will be next year's crop in Brazil, 169. That is a big, big number, my friends. And the soybean old production here at 154, again, noticeably bigger. We did take the corn production number down to 122. This was expected to be 124. Next year's Brazil production at 137. So again, some big, big numbers coming out of Brazil. Let's see what we have here for world soybean ending stocks, 129, and that's up from 114. So that number is big for the new crop there. Corn ending stocks, let's see, corn ending stocks for new crop, 312. The survey was 319, so that was a little bit smaller. The prior number was 318, so we're going to have to dig apart the report and just see where that corn went away from, because there is a noticeable difference, and that global number is actually rather supportive to the corn crop.
Sterling, as we roll through all these numbers, I don't want to dismiss them. It seems so many times if you don't get that initial shock, it's kind of a ho-hum report. And I think this kind of qualifies that. It kind of brings all the more importance to that monthly marketing meeting coming up, because it's largely going to be, if I'm a spec fund, how do I interpret this report? Do I look at the risk in front of me the next 30 to 60 days as something that I want to maintain, or take the profit out, weather. So having
Yes.
that guest from Planalytics on this monthly marketing meeting is going to be pretty important.
And as far as the initial jolt, we were up. Corn made a high at 466 and a quarter on July. That's 4 cents above where we were trading, and we're right back to 462 right now. New crop at 485 is up a nickel at a high of 489. So basically we're right back to where we were. And soybeans are unchanged to a smidge lower. So we had the big blurb when it happened, and now we're right back to where we were. And wheat actually holding a little bit better gains here. There seems to be a little bit, let's call it a lack of willingness to sell into the wheat on this.
Well, and Sterling, I think a lot of that goes with where that wheat crop is at versus where corn and bean crops are at in the U.S. I mean, we're close to harvest. We know a little bit more there, and what we know may not be the greatest news in a lot of places in regards to what's coming out of Russia, what's coming out of Ukraine, the problem in Kansas. Those are more certain issues than what could happen in corn and soybeans in the next 60 days.
Right. And the next 60 days, obviously for corn, the key period here, how many acres we get, and we have that acreage report that comes out at the end of June. That will be very closely watched. And and how many soybean acres, that could end up being a bit of a question as well. So we are kind of where we were where we started with this, and we've cemented where the baseline guess for the June report will be.
Yeah, I think that's the next one we got to look for, weather day by day, week by week until we get there. We've got to watch that corn acreage number in June. I think that's going to be the key. My bet is greater than 90 million acres, just based on what we're seeing out there. Sterling, you got a guess for us there?
I'm going to go with 90.5.
No,
Pick
gonna
up
add
a half a
some.
million acres.
Gonna add 500,000 acres.
Well, here's the thing. Corn seems to be at least moving up into a new higher range.
Yeah,
If you've got, if you're ready to go and you've got land that, well, maybe I am. If you're on the fence, and let's say December corn is trading, well, let's be hopeful here. Let's call it 495.
yeah.
Now
You
you
know,
can hook that planter up and plant. You just might.
you might. One thing that's changed on that, and there's no, this is not objective. This is just subjective farmer talk. But in the past, we've typically planted corn first. When you're all set up, corn's going in the ground good, it's easy to add 80, 100, 160 acres on a farm if conditions are right. Folks, things have changed, at least in a large part of the country where beans are going in the ground earlier. And that
Yes.
same temptation is there for that first crop planted, that if things are going well and you find yourself with time and ground that's ready to be planted, there's just that temptation to maybe continue to plant. And that may be weighing a little bit on how we size up these
Oh,
acres and the surprises as well.
as the weather looks, and let's call it right before Memorial Day, if we're all good and the planting weather is good, and again, you've got the seed, you got everything you need to go, and you see that ground sitting there, well, that's a big temptation.
Well, Sterling, I know
So,
it's a little early to cut this off, but I think we've exhausted the information in the report. Any final thoughts from you?
as far as anything else goes, we have two big inflation numbers today, next week, which will be interesting drivers for interest rates. We had some bad University of Michigan sentiment numbers this morning that gave the stock market, were not negative on the day, but took a nice rally away. So the continued outside market volatility is going to be something that we're going to have to pay attention to. And don't kill the messenger here, but crude oil, we'll see. It's trying to form a bottom. We'll see if it can, as long as it stays below 80 bucks a barrel, we are good to go. If it starts trading back above 80 for some reason, that would be a problem. But other than that, looks like a glorious Friday, so we should go enjoy it, I would
Hey,
think.
I tell you what, corn and beans in the green for Friday and a nice week. Hey, can't beat
Hey,
that, can you?
hey, we had that big rally and then we kind of failed back, and that makes the market very vulnerable. The fact that we're shaking off that vulnerability is a good note to close out the week on.
Absolutely. Well, everybody have a great weekend. I hope planters are rolling here in the next couple of days in the I-States and out in Nebraska. And we will see you for the Thursday marketing meeting. And that day is what day, Sterling?
That is on Thursday, which let me punch up a calendar here. While I'm punching that up, I'd like to remind everyone to listen to the podcast and read the daily outlooks, as there will be plenty of volatility with this. That third Thursday marketing meeting is on Thursday, May 16th. So make sure to join us for that, because this, whether we're now in the game on situation. April, we kind of, it's kind of April, but now we've got stuff in the ground and things are happening.
Yep. Well, very good. Very good. Everybody have a great weekend.
Yep. Everyone take care.